Hello people, welcome back to The Struggle, where we dive deep into the most effective ideas, stories, theories and strategies for overcoming life's challenges. To struggle is to make forceful efforts to break free from restriction, and together we'll figure out how you're restricted and explore how you can struggle to break free, find meaning and grow through whatever adversity you're facing. This is episode 52. And what if I told you that everything you've been doing to feel fulfilled, your achievements, your productivity, and your constant need to figure it all out, is actually what's keeping you stuck? For 20 years, I believed that if I just worked hard enough, thought deeply enough, and achieved enough, I'd finally feel at peace. But I was wrong. No amount of external success can fix an internal struggle. And the paradox? The more I thought to solve life, the worse it got. So, what's the answer? Well, stay with me, because in the next few minutes I'm going to share the biggest realization of my life, one that completely flipped my understanding of happiness, success, and fulfillment. And if you've ever felt like you're endlessly chasing something that's just out of reach, this might just change everything for you too. But first, this episode is brought to you by the Struggle newsletter. This is a fortnightly newsletter that complements the podcast nicely, in which I send out every other Sunday a short article concerning the art of embracing struggle. We are all restricted in some way, and we could all do with struggling to break free from whatever restricts us. The struggle is different for everyone, but I can assure you the Struggle newsletter and this podcast will help you discover what it is that is restricting you and how you can best struggle to break free from that restriction. If you're finding it difficult to be more productive, to be healthy, to achieve your goals, perhaps you're chasing the wrong thing. Because a lot of us believe that we should be aiming for happiness, but this is an unwise pursuit because happiness comes and goes without any control from us. However, there is a way to be more fulfilled with life, and that is to embrace the struggle. Maybe it's exercising for you, maybe it's being healthy, maybe it's having uncomfortable conversations, maybe it's taking a career risk, maybe it's discovering who you are, paying attention to your feelings, or to be autonomous. And that's why I created a newsletter, to help you discover where you could be struggling more and where you could become more fulfilled. Along with the article, I also provide tips, strategies, and recommendations such as podcasts, movies, music, and recipes to help along the way. So to sign up completely for free, go to gregorthomson.com, the link will be in the show notes, confirm your subscription, and then check your spam folder for your welcome newsletter, and then add me to your contacts to continue to receive it in your inbox for free. And that's it. You're on your way to productively struggling more and being more healthy, motivated, and fulfilled. Now, let's get on with the struggle. In the first Harry Potter novel, the heroic but rebellious trio embark on a quest to stop the powerful Philosopher's Stone from getting into the wrong hands. They're met with a variety of obstacles ranging from a three-headed dog to a giant murderous chessboard. One of the obstacles they face is that of Devil's Snare, a magical plant that reacts aggressively to movement and struggle, tightening its grip on its victims. The more an individual moves and struggles to break free, the more it ensnares and strangles its victims. There are two manners in which one can defeat Devil's Snare, however. One being light and heat, making fire or sunlight an effective counteraction, and the other to simply refrain from struggling, relax, and allow it to loosen its grip. We see our trio fall onto Devil's Snare in the film, and at first they're all being ensnared tighter and tighter until the ever-intelligent Hermione recalls that Devil's Snare loosens its grip when you refrain from struggling. She is freed, and Harry follows her. However, Ron refuses to stop struggling and is being consumed further and further into the plant's grasp until the ever-intelligent Hermione recalls the other manner in which to defend against Devil's Snare and frees Ron with a sunlight-producing spell. It's the nature of Devil's Snare that I want to relate to life today. You see, for over a decade, I've been perfecting the act of finding solutions to every problem I faced, or every problem I would face, except for the one most meaningful, the internal. I have wired my brain to think in a certain way. In fact, I've wired my brain to only think and not feel. I'm a very objective and logical person. Or at least that's what I have been unconsciously telling myself my entire life. And there's good reason for this. There's a multitude of reasons why I honed this propensity to think rather than feel, ranging from the manner in which I was born, to my nature as a child, to the flawed beliefs that child created regarding love and praise, to my coming of age, to bullying, to grief, to compulsive soothing, to the hedonic treadmill of always wanting more. It's an incredibly effective coping strategy for when anything painful occurs. Do or think your way out of it. This meditation practice, or this workout, or this supplement is proven to increase dopamine in the brain, which is proven to make you feel better. This is the so very enticing and comforting black and white thinking. It's thinking in terms of this has been proven to objectively work, and so that's the solution. But of course, as viewers or listeners of the podcast should already know, there are no solutions, only trade-offs, as Thomas Sowell said. This obsession with finding the objective solutions fits into what self-determination theory, or SDT, describes as the fundamental human need for autonomy, competence, and relatedness. My relentless pursuit of productivity, success, and more was essentially an attempt to satisfy these needs, especially competence and a desire to feel effective and in control. Now notice that I said feel in control because we're never really in control. We can fool ourselves into thinking we're in control, we can work ourselves into feeling like we're in control, but we cannot possibly control everything, much less how we feel. No matter how many productive things we try to accomplish, in essence trying to make ourselves feel happy, the internal is not to be controlled. Autonomy does not come from frantically trying to control how we feel. That sounds like someone who's out of control. Autonomy comes from knowing what you can control. It's knowing that you can't control how you feel and accepting that. And here's the thing. SDT emphasizes that true psychological well-being comes from intrinsic motivation, not external validation. So again, no matter how much you accomplish externally, no matter how much praise you receive, subscribers you gain, or money you make, you'll never feel satisfied because you can't control your emotions externally. My type A personality, which is characterized by competitiveness, urgency, high ambition, impatience, and a strong desire for success, had me frantically working as a means to prove something to myself and to others, which meant that my motivations were largely extrinsic, driven by external rewards, recognition, and a continuous belief and a continuous battle to feel enough. But that battle only has one side, like a country bombing itself. This is why no amount of success ever felt sufficient. The more I struggled, the more the internal void remained, much like the devil's snare tightening its grip. SDT suggests that a shift towards intrinsic motivation in which actions are driven by internal values rather than the need for external approval is the only way to experience true fulfillment. Thus, when I curated and developed this way of thinking over the span of 20 years, I thought I was creating solutions to my problems, when, in reality, I was climbing the wrong mountain. I thought the problem was, I want to make X amount of money, I want this degree, I want these grades, I want this many subscribers, and I want this much success, all of which I don't have now, so that's the problem I'm trying to solve. The real problem, however, is I don't feel good enough now, and so I must work myself to exhaustion until I can relax. The real problem is I was made to feel less than worthy at school, and so I must become successful to prove that I am worthy now. The real problem is I was naturally the clever and calm child growing up, so I must live up to that reputation now. All of these problems are internal problems that I've been trying to solve externally. I've been trying to put a square peg into a circular hole. All of this has, of course, been unconscious up until now. And I need to remember that there are no solutions, only trade-offs. And so really, I've been searching for the former by trading off the internal. I've been trying to solve my internal inadequacies with external accolades. The trade-off of building this productive, disciplined mindset is that I will never feel good enough as long as I maintain that mindset, no matter how much I try to achieve, or no matter how much I actually do achieve. You cannot solve the emotional with the logical. You cannot think your way out of feelings. But of course, as a child, I could never have realized this, because as far as a child is concerned, they feel pain and obviously want it to stop, and so will think of any way to stop it, distracting themselves with video games, social media, pornography, and even what looks from the outside like a healthy activity like writing or reading. Of course, a child isn't going to feel pain, then sit with it and examine it closely. And so we come to the realization I had last week in a therapy session. The hilariously frustrating revelation that is not a solution. But before we get to that, I had been trying so hard by doing to make myself feel good, feel worthy, and it worked, but only on a surface level. Doing productive things certainly makes you feel good, because objectively they change the physical chemicals in your brain and your physical state to a more energized state. Ice baths, of course, make us feel good. Workouts make us feel good. Doing the dishes makes us feel good. But they don't do anything to the existential or to the psyche. They don't solve the internal that isn't there to be solved in the first place. And just like the productive distractions, the unproductive distractions do the same thing, but in a different order. You see, the productive distractions make us feel good after we've completed them, whereas the unproductive distractions make us feel pretty much good instantly. Then they potentially make us feel bad. Both binge watching television and working out make us feel good, but binge watching TV is instantly gratifying and perhaps regretful later, whereas working out is difficult in the moment but gratifying afterwards. Pornography and ice baths are both gratifying distractions, but the former is potentially chock full of regret following the consumption, whereas the ice bath is difficult in the moment but gratifying following the immersion. All of these distractions are various attempts as humans to gratify ourselves. They all have the potential to distract ourselves from the internal. All of the ways in which we distract ourselves from the internal all have one thing in common, and this all leads to this most frustrating but relieving realization that I had. It's one of the most revelatory realizations I had in the entire year and a half that I've been going to therapy. But before we get to that, I believed for close to 10 years that my consumption of pornography was a problem, and that was the only problem. It made me feel depressed, it affected my relationships, my mood, and most of all, it stopped me from being productive. I then realized last year that being productive and watching pornography are both doing the same thing. They're both distracting from the internal, what truly needed to be addressed. As Coach Joe Hudson says, every way in which you try to avoid an unwanted emotion, you actually create it. And so I created coping strategies that caused the very emotions I was trying to cope with. Shame, guilt, not feeling good enough. For obvious reasons, pornography caused these feelings, but being productive surprisingly did that as well. It made me chronically feel like there was more to do, or I hadn't done enough, or I wasn't good enough until I did more. And so pretty much everything I've done, everything I've thought, has been in service of this circular cycle of I don't feel good enough, I'll distract myself with either unproductive or productive behaviors, which will lead to not feeling good enough, and so on and so on and so on. The funny thing is, all of the ways in which I try to distract myself and avoid unwanted emotions, I of course created them, but they are all external strategies and behaviors. They're me doing something to fix something that can't be fixed with doing, and so this long-winded story leading up to this climactic end, finally revealing the life-changing revelation I had after 20 years of trying to solve the internal with the external is nothing. Nothing will solve it. Stop struggling. I actually laughed when I realized this, because I had been tirelessly and frantically trying to figure out why I wasn't feeling good and why I keep distracting myself and why I felt the need to work myself into an exhausted mess. And the answer was staring at me, trying to get my attention. I've been saying it for 51 episodes. At the end of every episode, I've been saying the answer lies in the struggle. The answer lies in the struggle. The struggle for me is learning not to struggle. For 20 years, I've been frantically struggling while the devil's snare tightens its grip on me. I've been trying to find freedom by doing all of the things that entrap and imprison me further. It's as if I've been building a house for years, only to realize there were never any bricks in my hands, and I've been stacking nothing on top of nothing. Of course, it's not like I haven't achieved anything. I've achieved a great deal externally, but the trade-off has been the internal. The ironic thing is, I thought I was being logical about solving my problems, telling myself once I've achieved this much success, I'll relax and do less. But I can do less now. In my therapist's words, it's like prolonging scratching an itch when you could just relieve yourself of it now. I don't have to put myself through the ringer to achieve an end result that I had all along. Freedom is not having to do anything. It's not doing anything at all. It's just not having to do anything. And of course, externally, work is required because no one's going to pay you to not do anything. But internally, there is nothing to be solved and therefore nothing to be done. The internal isn't there to be fixed. It's not there to be solved. It's certainly there to acknowledge, to be curious about and to learn from. But it's not there to be solved or fixed. It's there to just be, which runs completely counter to how I've been thinking the last 20 years, because I think in such logical terms. My propensity over the last year and a half throughout therapy has been, okay, so what do I do now? Right, yes, the internal can't be solved, I get it, but what do I do now? Okay, all of the ways I've been trying to avoid an unwanted emotion I actually cause, yeah, but what do I do now? Nothing. Thinking won't solve it. Doing won't solve it. Nothing will solve it. Nothing will solve it. What a paradoxical statement. Nothing will solve it. No thing will solve it, and nothing will solve it. If you're anything like me with a type A personality, then meditate on that statement. Nothing will solve it. I told myself, like many type A people, well, if I don't feel good enough now, I'll make myself feel good enough when I have this many subscribers or this much money or this much status and success. But that's completely illogical, because all of the things I told myself would make me feel better before didn't work. I moved on to the next achievement. Now, what does this mean for the title of this podcast if the big revelation I had was to stop struggling, not keep struggling? Well, the answer still lies in the struggle, in that perhaps we all need to stop struggling to make life bearable, stop struggling to distract ourselves from ourselves, stop struggling to distract ourselves from life, and realize that this is it, this is life, and it's okay, you don't have to distract yourself from it, this is it, it's fine. Oliver Burkeman says we distract ourselves with the feeling of busyness as if by outrunning time we might somehow outrun finitude itself. By constantly struggling, distracting, and staying perpetually busy, we are attempting to outrun our finitude and our own minds, both of which are impossible to outrun. So we need to realize if we just stop struggling, perhaps life would set us free. Perhaps we would break free from what restricts us, like the devil's snare loosening its grip. When you're set free, it's realizing there's not going to be this amazing external change. It's going to be internal. It's just realizing this is it. This is freedom. And it's fine. That's okay. It's freeing, it's relieving, but it's not going to be... Don't expect it to be, you're going to feel incredible now, and you're always going to feel incredible, and you're going to feel fulfilled. It's just, this is it. It's fine. You're going to feel worse, you're going to feel better. That's it. Perhaps the struggle is in not struggling at all. Now, that's certainly difficult, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. And let me tell you, it most certainly has been a struggle to find this answer. It's been a persistent and constant effort to break free, and of course we can look back and think, if only I'd realised this sooner, I'd be in a much better place now. But that's just thinking our way. It's trying to think our way out of our issues. And we're always doing the best we have with the limited information we have, so I don't think I could have realised this any time other than now. But I really hope you've found this useful. It certainly was life-changing for me, in a sort of freeing, relieving way, not in a sort of massive, fulfilling, amazing achievement. It was just freeing and relieving. This is it. I don't have to struggle. This is my mind. This is life. Nothing will solve it. And so perhaps I'm going to have to rethink my sign-off for the podcast, because the answer certainly does lie in the struggle, but perhaps the answer is to stop struggling. Hi guys, just a few more things before you take off. Firstly, thank you so much for watching. It genuinely means a lot to see people watching and liking the content. Second, if you're enjoying the content, please subscribe to the channel. That's the best way you can support the podcast. As you can probably tell, I don't have a team behind me helping with recording or editing the podcast, and I certainly don't have a lot of fancy equipment, so any help or support is greatly appreciated, because it will help the podcast grow and get better. And finally, keep on struggling.